Okay, so what we're going to be talking about is just a lot of you on this call, which is nice. You've already been a part of the journey, and you understand kind of what brought me to this conclusion that number one, there's a huge benefit to being in having a private equity fund. Obviously, that is slightly less than all the work that I've gone through to create a public company. And it's funny, there are a lot of benefits now that we're over the 1 year of work that we had to do to create this public company. And now I'm able to sit back, and even between private equity fund on one end and public company, there obviously are some benefits to the public company. But when you compare the amount of work, which, I thought that the couple months that we went through on my largest fund, and even, the month worth of work of creating a recent fund, I was like, oh man, that's a ton of work. But compared to just, creating an LLC. But when you compare the benefits that you get and the little bit of work that you have to do to create a private equity fund compared to the benefits that you get, and the absolutely outrageous and enormous. I mean, it's one of the reasons that, I've been a bit more under a rock this last year, not only because of just the amount of work, but also just I literally couldn't talk about a lot of the work that I was doing. So a lot of times when I'm doing videos and stuff, I'm talking about a lot of the work that I'm doing, and I literally am just I haven't legally been allowed to talk about any of the stuff regarding the public company. So, just comparing those two things, it just became more and more obvious that, here's this incredibly beneficial and valuable vehicle that I don't think anybody really is paying attention to. And that's where all of the really great opportunities always are. When I bought my first business, and we're buying, for the first decade of my first businesses, nobody was talking about buying businesses. And there was just there was literally, it would just be funny. There was just very, very little competition. So, I see, obviously now there is more competition there, and I see this, the private equity space is just, man, wow, like here we are again at this super, what you call blue ocean space of creating and funds and managing funds. And, I talk about the whole rich dad philosophy that, you start out as an employee, the goal is just to become self-employed. And then after that, to become a business owner, with the real goal being to get into what he calls the I quadrant, becoming an investor. And this is the quickest path to not only starting to build that skill set, but to build a profession as an investor. And I know that even me saying that, whenever I talk about this, and this is why I want to do this call, which kind of, will break some of this stuff down. But, I know, and it's cool. I think I saw Retta's on who worked at Goldman Sachs, but, I think everybody looks at those kinds of companies. We look at the JP Morgan, it's like, okay, like I can't do what those guys do. Or we look at fund managers like Ray Dalio, like I can't do what those guys do. And, that space seems like it's way too regulated. There are way too many obstacles for me to get over. And I think that it's one of those things, just like anything else, a lot of it is just never having done it. And it's funny, now that we've made it over the hump with at least the SEC approval on the public entity, now I've done it. So even if I have to do that again, I think every time it's just like, okay, I had no idea that this was a part of it, or I'm learning this for the first time, and I don't even understand how this works. I got to go and I got to research it. So there's all of this additional work as we're going through that process. And I'm constantly basically a deer in headlights because I never have done it before. So even after this time of doing it, I could do it. I don't really have a plan just because I think that this is a bigger opportunity and more scalable. But now I could go and do that again, and it's the same thing with funds, but a lot less complicated. That once you do it and you start to build those systems around it, it just becomes this easy thing. And so that's what we're working to do is, man, let's just create systems to be able to pump out these micro private equity funds to invest in these types of assets. Because right now, there's been a big opportunity in this, but now that COVID has hit Earth, the opportunities are going to be even more outrageous. It's just going to be a ton of opportunities. And so this is kind of the time where I'm like, okay, it's time to get super aggressive with being set up and being prepared to take advantage and to help. I think it's an opportunity to help on both sides. There are a lot of people with capital that are looking for places to put that capital outside. I think for the first time, we're in a place where people are looking for or understand that, hey, if all of my eggs are in just the stock market basket, I think for years people have thought of the stock market as the place to diversify. So you've got, I'm going to have some stocks over here, and then I'll have some in this industry and some in this type and this spider and these kind of things. But when something happens that it impacts the whole economy, and I think we're just at an inkling of the impact that this is going to have long term. And the trillions of dollars that have just been lost by companies all over the US, people realize, oh, wow, like I need some diversification outside of just being diversified within the market. So there's that part of the opportunity. And then obviously there is the opportunity of the businesses that have those baby boomers that have been waiting. They've been waiting to retire, and now they're like, okay, I'm out of here. The other businesses that whose capital will be exhausted during this period, and they're going to be looking for somebody to come in. The businesses that just don't want to deal with the stress. There are going to be a lot of entrepreneurs. This is one of the things that I do agree heavily with Gary Vee. Is there've been a lot of people who have been having fun with entrepreneurship because things have been so great. And then, once things get really tough, it's like, oh, like I'm going to get zero income. And a lot of these folks are very established businesses. I was talking to my mom about one of the largest kind of independent chains, restaurant chains in Chattanooga that, I couldn't believe it, but they're just like, hey, we're closing forever. Chapter 11, we're not going to open again. This is it. And so this shift in the economy is going to create a lot of opportunities. And we see it, it's cool just because a lot of the attention has been on private equity. And before, you had all of the large funds that I talked about on the YouTube channel that have been getting into the space. Grant Cardone, who all he could talk about is real estate, and then started to break down the numbers in that interview I discussed, and realized like, oh wow, like I need to get into private equity. Like this real estate stuff can't compare to the returns that I can generate as a manager or a GP, and the returns I can generate for my investors. And he's interesting just because obviously, his angle is just give me your money and invest it with me. And so he's been pushing that. And, I think the cool thing and what we want to do here is, I'm always looking to how can we go and do the thing together? If it's buying businesses, I don't want to just say, hey, like, I'm gonna, give me your money. Let's just go buy a business. Like, hey, like, let's go buy the businesses together. And, if that's what my thesis is, I want to put my actual money in with you and take those risks with you, as opposed to this is my thesis. just hand over your money. So that's the idea of what we're doing with building these funds. So we're going to talk on this call just about building the fund, what that looks like, creating your recruiting funnels. I talked about the 7 layers of recruiting on a recent video. We won't go through all of those, but we'll kind of talk about how that works and what we're doing. And then, we'll get into the next fund that I'm building. And if you're interested in learning by doing, how we can partner on this next fund at the GP level, where you become general partners with me, and I'm going to have 3 folks that we become general partners together, and we build a fund out, and it becomes kind of a case study that people can follow how we do that, and we build that out together. So let's jump in. The general thesis here is always kind of upping the levels. Obviously running a business is great for generating cash flow. Running a business that invests in other businesses is even better for generating cash flow. And what we're talking about today is even a level beyond that, which is running a business that invests in other businesses that invest in businesses that generate cash flow. And the whole key here is the level of diversification that you create. I think what we're seeing now in the market, and I see it in my portfolio, where we definitely have businesses that are doing way better because of COVID, and we have businesses that are doing a lot worse because of COVID. And if you don't have that, I've talked about it for a long time, but it's just really, I'm doing you a disservice if I'm not pushing you towards the private equity fund, because like I mentioned with the restaurant in Chattanooga, this is a great business, amazing business. The brand equity, just everybody in Chattanooga knows this restaurant. The brand equity that they have is just millions and millions of dollars, and nobody could have seen this coming. And so the importance of diversification is centered around having a lot of different things, because there's no way you can predict the future. And that's just why I say, like, I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't tell you, hey, the only way to really protect yourself is by having this type of either fund structure or at least fund strategy, because we have no idea what could be next. We just don't know. And no matter what business you go out there and buy, and sometimes 2-3 businesses that you go out there and buy, it's a huge risk and danger, just because we don't know what's around the corner. So that's the part of the point of this, is protection on the downside. But the truth is, we'll talk about all the benefits on the upside. You just make more money, literally, even if it's just tax benefits. So we'll get into that. But first, let's talk about this general structure. I did have somebody on the channel that I got to go back and do a video on. They basically said, dude, I've been subscribed to the channel for like 3 months or something, and I still don't know what a private equity fund is. And I'm like, that's true. Like, I take it totally for granted that people know what a private equity fund is. So let's break down the structure. I know you guys get the basis of what it is, but let's break down like what the actual structure is. So at the top of a private equity fund, you have the general partner. And so when I'm talking about creating a fund, these are the people that come together and create the fund itself. They have control. They have control of what investments the fund makes, the general strategy of the fund. They're the people that are controlling the path of that. There may be an investment committee, unlike a corporation or anything like that. There's not necessarily a board generally, but you would have an investment committee, and the reason you might have that in addition to the general partners is just to say, hey, we have these people that are a part of the general partnership, but we also have this investment committee that have this many years of experience and all of that. And those people are going to be helping us make the investment decisions. But at the end of the day, unlike a board, they still wouldn't say like, okay, we, are telling you to do this, or we're going to fire you, which is what a board can do to the CEO. And even kick out that CEO, as we saw with Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs started the business, but the board was able to say, we don't want you here running the business anymore, and they can literally fire you. So that's one of the interesting differences. So what the GP ends up getting is a portion of the profits as earnings or a management fee. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference there. This isn't an incorporation, like I said. One of the examples of why that's important is Steve Schwarzman. And it's good to kind of read the stories of some of these folks that have started private equity funds. But Steve Schwarzman, who started Blackstone, they went public. And everybody who goes public has an incorporation. And he ended up doing a different structure because one of the cool things, if you're a fund manager, is that every fund manager knows that whole thing that I just talked about. They know that in a corporation and the normal business, even that is founded and that goes public, they can be voted out in a lot of cases. And so Steve Schwarzman was like, hey, I like the fund structure where I started this fund, you can't get rid of me, it's my fund. But he's kind of double dipping because he's like, okay, I want to go public, but I don't want anybody to ever be able to fire me. So he kind of kept his structure in a way that he could, he still has complete control. So it's kind of funny. So Steve Schwarzman can never get Steve Jobs and get fired from his own company. Under the general partner, you have the limited partnership. Stephen is asking, will this recording be available? Yeah. So it's being recorded, and you guys will be able to get this recording. So the limited partnership, you've got an LP agreement, and this is going to be with the investors in the fund. And those investors are the limited partners in the case of a fund. So it's not members would be in an LLC, shareholders would be in a corporation. In a fund, those folks are LPs, or limited partners. They'll get an LP agreement, and then they'll also get a PPM, and this details what you're going to invest in, what the strategy is, kind of what the investment thesis is, and in the private equity case, what you plan on buying. Now, for us GPs, we make money two ways, like I mentioned a second ago. We make money as a profit share, or we can make money as a management fee. And the profit share, this is the way all of my funds have been for two reasons. Number one, I think it's really fair. I mean, when you are creating a fund, you're going with somebody and they're going to invest in your fund, and you're saying, hey, I'm going to make money with you. If you don't make money, I don't make money. We're going to make money together. And so that's what you're saying. I'm only going to take a portion of the profits. Now, this alone is super, super powerful, because what you're saying is, there's a certain amount of income that's coming from these businesses where you only have a small amount maybe of your own cash that's put in, but your ROI on that cash is going to be huge because you're getting a portion of the total amount of profits, but you're only putting a small portion of the cash as the GP. In some cases, as a lot of fund managers are, it's basically no cash. So effectively, there may be covering kind of the initial fees and that kind of thing. So your ROI can be really, really big, especially with us when we're dealing with unique deals. If you take a couple of deals that have been done and within the program lately, we just did a call with Curtis, who's on right now. We did a call with him where in his deal, it was zero cash. You're getting a return on essentially zero money invested. And that is, an infinite return, which for a fund is just ridiculous. You have to come up with a cost basis. And so, if you look at what we can do in some deals, where putting in $1,000 and getting even a $5,000 return, like that kind of ROI is just so outrageous on a percentage basis. And Ernesto is another case where it's just essentially worked out to be a zero cost basis investment. And so for us, like, it's almost like you want to bring back the returns just so that it makes sense on a accounting basis. But in those cases, your return is going to be really, really great as a GP, but you're also building that track record of these incredible returns, which has a lot more power long term. So that's the profit share aspect of this. The other part is a management fee. Now, there are two reasons that I don't do this. Is number one, unlike the profit share, the management fee is just charged on the total amount of assets. So, it's kind of what you see in a mutual fund. I mean, you're getting 2-3 points just off of the money, whether they make money or not, which is crazy, so they want to take that cash out. And each year they're going to make money based on the total amount of assets, regardless of if they actually profited. So that's one reason that I don't necessarily do it. The other reason is you do have to have a license to charge management fees. So anybody can start a fund. This is one of the things a lot of people don't know is, like, the average person outside of us, like, they think that, oh, in order for me to do it, I can't do a private equity fund. You got to have a license or be an investment bank. Like, how can I just go start a private equity fund? Well, the truth is, you don't need that. So unless you charge a management fee, which I wouldn't even want to charge a management fee. But there are some cool things that may be worth going out and getting a Series 65 in very, very unique cases. So those are two reasons that I wouldn't want to charge that. And I think that it's really fair for the investors if you do the profit sharing. I'll get to that. So yeah, I'll talk about that, Curtis, for sure. All right. So underneath the GP, you have the limited partnership. Underneath the limited partnership, you've got holding companies, which can be LLCs. And so the same way that we have LLCs right now, those can be they would be a holding company, and that's where you actually hold the asset. And so even as a asset protection layer, you've got all these layers between you and the actual businesses that you are buying. So in America, this is the accepted way to raise a large amount of cash. And a lot of times you hear people talking about hedge funds and private equity funds and these fund managers that make outrageous amounts of money and they pay no taxes. Steve Schwarzman was actually one of those folks, and Henry Kravis, actually. Henry Kravis was one of the first people that, talked about the same thing that Warren Buffett has, which is like my employees pay way more in taxes than I do. Buffett talks about his secretary specifically paying way more taxes. And this isn't just something that is, we want to benefit the rich, which obviously it's going to have that side effect. But a lot of it is, when Congress is getting together, it's like, we want to attract money to America. We want to attract investors to invest in things that will invest in America. And so entities that are built to invest in America, we're going to create laws that protect them, that allow them to pay more taxes, pay less taxes, that just encourage people to do this structure, because this structure is built to invest. And that's what we want to encourage people to do. We want to encourage people to invest. And so it's just the vehicle that you want to choose. And the vehicle that you're in is crucially important. I got a buddy that talks about funds. He's like, yeah, like, hey, if you're running up against a Kenyan and they're a marathon runner, there's no way you're going to beat them. They're absolutely incredible. I know I'm not going to be able to beat them, but you put me in a car, all of a sudden that I think I can get them. You know what I mean? You put me in a Lamborghini, I'm definitely going to get them. So the vehicle that you are in is really important. And that's what we're talking about with this fund. It's like literally, this is just a favored structure, not only from the government, but when we talk about banking, when we talk about dealing with sellers, when we talk about taxes, just all of those things, this is the best structure that you can do these deals in. And that's why you see so many billionaires being created. I was looking at some of the billionaires, and probably the most impressive things, there are a ton of billionaires that became billionaires in their 40s. One of them was Tom Gores from Platinum Equity. He's an interesting guy to look up. Another guy that became a billionaire in his 40s, Robert Smith. From Vista. They're cool. They buy a lot of software companies and have done some really neat deals in the same vein that we talk about, where they still are just buying for such high multiples, but then they're able to get financing or sell and get investors at such a higher multiple than that. So they're excited to be buying at a 9, 10 multiple and then getting cash out of that business at a 15 multiple. And so you compare that to the numbers that we get to play with, man, and it's just a whole nother world. Like literally those guys dream of the multiples that we're able to get. Mark Rowan is another case with Apollo. James Coulter is another case, became a billionaire in his 40s. And the last couple, like, they're not even the founders. Like, we're not even talking like all these guys. First couple guys are founders, but we're just talking about being in this space. There's so much opportunity on the upside that it's what allows these folks. It's not, obviously they're all super bright guys and great guys, but tell these 4 guys to go start a business from scratch. That's just the types of businesses people are starting to become a billionaire. Like, they're not going to be able to do it. It is the vehicle that they're in that allowed them to do what they're doing. And it doesn't mean it's without its obstacles or work, but it just means that you're going to be able to get to these goals. And the reason that I focus on the folks, like showing these there are plenty of folks that made hundreds of millions or millions in their 40s, but when I'm looking at where I want to work, I just want to see what other people are doing. If my goal is to be at 1/10 of what that person has done, and consistently there are a lot of people that are doing 10 times what my goal is, I want to kind of work backwards from that and see, okay, why is this the case? So there are plenty of folks that in their 70s become billionaires, and we see those examples. But man, I don't want to wait till 70. I want to do something a little quicker than that. And so it's about playing that right game. It reminds me of a saying that my principal in high school always said, which was, if you play dumb games, you're going to get dumb prizes. And I went to all boys school, and we had some people that were always doing dumb stuff. and so he would just say, listen, if you do dumb things, the only thing that come out is going to be dumb prizes. But I think the opposite of that is true. If you play really smart games, if you pick the game the most carefully, like, I think that most people are letting the game pick them. That's why they end up working in a cubicle for 40 years. And because they didn't get to pick their game. So I think if the first thing is like, okay, what game do I want to play? And then making sure that you're picking the best game possible. So I think that building a fund, getting that skill set down, and then being able to go out and do that over and over is a really, really powerful thing. So let's talk about the process of creating these funds. And then I want to talk a little bit about what we're up to with the fund that we're going to be creating this month. So the first thing that I feel like is important with this is actually what most people don't do. The first thing is having a deal or finding a deal. The opportunity I think that is at least gives people an example, especially if it's a new fund or a new entity that doesn't have a relationship with the investors. It gives them an example that, hey, we've already got one deal done. So there are a lot of things there are a lot of reasons around this, but I'll give you kind of the main couple. The first thing is it shows them, hey, we're going to be making money immediately. We've got a deal, it's going to close, income's going to be coming in, and we're going to be getting an ROI immediately. That creates a bit of sense of possibly missing out on that opportunity. Number two, it gives them an example of what to expect. So it's one thing to say, oh, okay, we're gonna do these types of deals and this is the dream and we're gonna get this kind of return and da-da-da. Well, when you are coming to the table, you're saying, hey, that same thing, this is a dream, these are the kind of deals we're going to do, this is the ROI we can expect, this is kind of our plan for the fund and the thesis. But you follow that up with, and here's the first one, that is a really powerful place to come from. The other thing with having the first deal is that you really want the whole thing already put in place. So when we're doing deals, like it could be outside financing, it could be investors, it could be whatever, but you're really going to them saying, listen, like this deal is really almost done. It's not that we're depending on you to come in or not. It's just, are you going to come in and get the benefit of this or not? So that also is just coming from a different place. And what you're doing is you're structuring kind of this win-win-win where you're going to that seller and saying, hey, I can buy your deal. Like, the cool thing about funds is that we're able to pay a little bit more for the deal. We do want really great terms, but a fund, you can easily go in and justify paying a 4 multiple, which in our space is amazing. And there are a lot of reasons around that, but with the fund structure, you're just able to give them more, but now you can get a much better deal structure because you're able to do that and give the investors still an amazing return. And now that amazing return is going to be leveraged because you're in a situation where you don't necessarily have to have that money like to live off of one deal. Your goal is to structure a deal, be able to move to the next one, have an operator, have a good conversation and a situation for that person in place. And so you create that win with them. And then you basically are showing this to investors. It becomes a win for the investor, it becomes a win for the GPs. And that creates this win-win-win. And the situation that we're going into right now, where there just aren't going to be many buyers, you're not even going to have to go a higher multiple than what we've seen in the past. It's just going to be slightly higher multiple than what people are doing today, which is going to be lowered from the 3. And in some cases, just especially right now, there literally are just no buyers. I was talking to Sam about the fact that I have brokers that are reaching out to me just saying like, hey, I don't care like if you buy the deal or anything, like, I just need to have the seller talk to somebody, they're getting antsy and that kind of thing. But, the market's going to have to reset. Every market is going to reset after this. So that's going to create these even more opportunities for us to come in and be a win-win. And I'll talk about kind of the secret tool that is really neat that we'll be able to use. Now, the other thing in this is when you're showing these to the investors initially, you're going to have some people that just say no, but building that rapport and just showing them what you're up to is really, really a powerful thing, and allowing them to follow along is really what builds your investor funnel. As you're doing these deals, Laurent, who's actually on the call, did a really great job with that, of just building rapport with a bunch of investors, having investors. I know you had some investors that were interested in the fund we just did, but we actually got full really quickly, so we weren't able to take advantage of that. But he just followed our process of building a relationship, talking about the deals he's doing, getting them excited about it, and so you're able to, as you build this, as you build this this process. I mean, the work that you're actually doing is also the marketing. So it's kind of neat. So our goal is to create win-wins, and we still have the same tools. We talk regularly about the tools that we use to put together deals. First is cash. We want to limit the amount of cash. That still is the case with a fund, because even when you have cash, you're going to generate your ROI based on the cash that you use. So we want to really limit that. The second part is seller financing. As we get to these other things, we start to see like, wow, this becomes a lot easier to get done. With seller financing, I can tell you all day long, even with me being somebody that they can research. If there's someone, internet business, a lot of times they already know who I am. And so I have a bit of credit just based off of who I am. But it's really interesting how even with that, I see a huge difference when I come to somebody with a fund. And so that's the big upside for you guys, is that you can come into this with a fund and instantly have more credibility than somebody who's been doing it for 20 years, because there's a lot of cachet associated with that. And it's just based on the fact that nobody else is doing that. You can rest assured that, that just, if you're going and buying some business in your town, and you come in and you're saying, hey, I represent this fund, and blah, 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 like, you're going to be the only person that's doing that. So that gives you a huge leg up when it comes to the seller financing aspect of the deal. The next part is the outside financing. Same thing here. And, we'll talk about some of the cases where maybe you use the LLC as the entity, and then in the other cases, you use the fund. And so you still have both. But, in the case of the fund, there are, especially if we're talking asset-based loans, a lot of these other loans where they may not have personal liability, it gives them a lot of ease once they realize, like, okay, you're professional, you're a fund, it's that, and we're not talking about a lot of extra work. These things can be created for 10 grand. So we're not talking about a whole lot of extra work, but it gives you so much more kind of leverage in how you negotiate with those outside financing entities, whether it's banks or lenders or asset-based lenders or any of that. Now, the other thing is, we talked a little bit about the investors, and we've had plenty of people that have worked with investors and raised capital from investors and partners. The cool thing is, same thing there. This entity was built for them, and so in addition to the other aspects of the deal that they get benefits off of, now you can offer them diversification. So it's not just, okay, invest in this business I'm about to buy. It's, hey, invest in the business I'm about to buy, but we're going to do more deals, and you're going to have a diversified portfolio. So if the COVID that we have no idea, whatever could be the next thing comes around the corner, you're in a better situation, and have a level of protection, and it's not exposure to the stock market. But you also have these tax benefits that come along with this. And in general, just to give you an idea of what these tax benefits are, the biggest one is that you get taxed as capital gains, because for us, if we buy a business and we're making income from it, you're going to get taxed as income. you may get a K1, you're going to get like your tax will be as income on that business. If you buy shares in a fund, then you're going to get taxed as capital gains, which is a much long-term capital gains. So you're going to have these long-term capital gains, and so you have the lowest tax rate. And as with always, you should talk to your accountant on your personal stuff, but there is a huge tax benefit to investing in a fund, in addition to diversification and all the other things that we talk about. Now, the other cool thing that we're able to do is, in some cases, you have an open-ended fund and use the shares in that fund as another tool. So, we talk about cash, we talk about seller financing, we talk about the outside financing, but now when you have the fund structure, you have this whole new thing. So the whole benefit to us going public is that we're using shares of this company. We don't even have the listing yet. So that's not coming for like 2 or 3 more months, but we're using that as currency. Yep, that's exactly right, Virgil. So that gives us this whole other currency as a deal maker. That is the most valuable thing, to have a tool that nobody else that you're competing with is using. That becomes a really powerful thing. And so with this fund, what you're creating is these shares. And so you may have a fund that you value at $1 million, and somebody comes in and they invest 100,000, they get 10%, but now you can take 50,000 of that and give that as the down payment or part of the down payment to somebody else. And this gives you this whole other tool. And this is, in addition to kind of everything else I'm talking about, this is just like one of the reasons why you're just crazy to do these deals without this structure, because it's just a currency that you get to create out of thin air. It's super, super powerful. And the final tool in the toolbox that's unique to right now is there are a ton of these COVID programs, loan programs for businesses, grants for businesses that we want to take advantage of. Some of these things can determine the types of businesses that we buy. And so we're in a very unique position where it's almost like we can see the answers to the quiz before we go in and take the quiz. And so, or while we're studying, we know exactly what even the questions are. So just knowing what they are looking for, we can go and buy the business that these programs are built for and get access to those and have all of these other tools to use in addition to those programs. So I am just really, really excited. So, we talked about some of the managers and the billionaires in their 40s and, just playing the right game and all of that. And so I think that's where we want to be. But, the idea that I'm focused on right now is almost creating a McDonald's-like system. So, McDonald's can go in and create a McDonald's from kind of the ground up and know exactly how much money it's going to generate. They know how to train the employees and have all of that in a package that's given to the owner to say, hey, follow these steps and you'll have a successful McDonald's. And that's what we're looking to build with funds. The interesting thing is with a fund, it's easier to create those systems than it is even the individual business buyer. Because the individual business buyer, they've got a lot of things that are just personal. It's like, I like this kind of business. I don't like that kind of business. I have this amount of cash. I don't have that amount of cash. I don't want to use SBA. And, I do like this kind of thing. So there are all these different things. But when you're building a fund, a lot of the systems for going out and getting investors is going to be exactly the same. A lot of the funds are the structures on how you're going to use your equity to buy the business so that you're not using cash or anything ends up being the same. Leveraging your name and brand to get those same deals like your deal that we were talking about as far as like joint the no money down type of deal, a lot of those things become a lot easier. So, you know, Curtis did one, Ernesto's was a little bit different, but in those deals, it becomes even a more powerful thing to be able to leverage the fund. What we're doing is it's what I call that cocktail party power that I saw was a lot bigger even 20 years ago when I would go into a cocktail party and talk about buying businesses. It was like, what are you talking about? And now I see that more with being a private equity fund manager. And, you know, and even Sam, CEO of a publicly traded company, what you want is you want to be able to go in and say that you do something that pulls people in, because even just that platform of telling people I manage a private equity fund, that gets you access to sit at, you know, the only reason I'm even taking the company public was because I had people that were a part of my fund. They liked what I was doing. They introduced somebody else and came together, and then we raised money based off of the fund and that history to have the capital to in another company go public. And so this is basically raising your game up. And what I say is like everybody has the option in business to play at the NBA level, at the college level, at the high school level, at junior high, or at, you know, little league. And most people are just choosing to play little league. Now, I could never be in the NBA. I had to give up my basketball dreams when I stopped growing in like 9th grade. That was the end. Everybody else kept growing. It's like, oh, okay, I guess basketball is not gonna be my thing. So, but the cool thing is in business, like you can choose the level that you want to play at. And so this becomes that opportunity. And once you're playing at that private equity fund manager, now you have all these other opportunities that come just because you're going to be seen as playing at a different level. So what we're looking to do right now is to start a fund. Obviously, there are going to be a ton of these opportunities to buy the deals that are in the micro private equity space. We're looking to start with some of the deals, a couple of deals that may even be in the portfolio, so that we're starting with a deal to bring to investors, and then we just walk down this path together. Where, you know, I'm putting in capital. I'm expecting people that do want to work on this will put in minimal, basically $5,000 into the GP entity. That's the entity that will take care of the administrative costs and those kinds of things. But essentially, your responsibility will only be the $5,000. And then we go down the path and you get to see everything. And it gives me the benefit of having some other people that can do the legwork, because I see this as a huge opportunity right now. And, you know, obviously we'll kind of go down the path together. But obviously I'm in the middle of taking a company public, but I know that I'll regret it if I don't start this process. So I'm picking 3 people. We'll start from beginning to end. We'll start a fund. We'll go out. We'll do the initial deal. You know, I'll be a big part of helping to raise capital. You know, like I said, your minimal capital will be $5,000. That's not $5,000 to me. That goes into the GP, and then we go out from there. So, yeah, that is the general. That's the cash amount that you would be responsible for. And we go and we kind of show like, hey, you know, even on a low budget, this is how you go out and you build this thing. All right. Wow, it's been almost an hour. Thank you guys for hanging in there. Nobody even dropped out. All right, let's get into some of the questions. If I miss it, feel free to re-pop it in here. Any idea if it's as ideal in Canada for tax purposes? You'll have to take a look. You'll have to take a look. I want to say that Canada would have the same mentality as the U.S. is wanting investors there, but we differ on a lot of things. The U.S. and Canada differ on a lot of things to be that close and that alike. So I would check it out. I know, I think I would just check it out. It's something to look into. Can you charge a few for expenses? Charge a few for expenses. I think that was, you may have to ask again. Okay, I'm gonna pop down and I'll get back to those other questions. How do you start the structure of the fund fee? Yeah, how do you, I'm sure you're asking like the fee of the fund. Curtis, if you want. So if you're, as far as fees, typically you'll have a minimum amount, and this is on the performance fee. You have a minimum amount, and Sam just asked the same thing, so I'll answer both of those. You have a minimum amount that you want your investors to pay, or you want to pay your investors. So that amount could be 8%. And so, it's like, hey, the first 8% goes to the investors. Everything after that 8%, we will split 50-50 or 30-70, just however you want to structure it. But that's the typical kind of structure. Can you charge a fee for the expenses? So you can charge a fee for the expenses. I like for that to at least be, I like for that to be the GP, like is your amount to invest. And I do see the questions coming down here. Let me pop up because I kind of skipped down. Yeah, you can charge for expenses if you want to. Oh, that's what you're asking. Okay, I saw that, Curtis. Got that. All right, 2 questions. Where does the GP find the operators? And when you talk about loans and COCO's programs in the company applying for that, the COVID. Okay. I was like, I have no idea what I talked about. COCO. All right, so first part, GP find the operators. The cool thing about this is when you're a private equity fund, you, in some cases, may not even buy the whole business. You can go in and invest and structure your investment. So right now, like, we're doing a lot of deals that are more royalty structured. It's just like, this is what we're doing even with Long Tail Pro, which I mentioned you guys on one of the training calls recently. So we're doing a deal on that, but we're structuring it as a royalty so that we're making a minimum amount every month, and then we're getting the royalty, the operators, all that stuff was already there. And so these are some of the higher levels things that we're going to be going through as we do the fund, is that in some cases we don't need a new operator. I would only do those kind of deals where it's very, very passive. One of the deals that I think may be good for this fund to buy, and Stephen is one of the leads on that, is a deal like Pick a Toilet, where it needs a writer and an SEO person. It can totally be outsourced. There's just very, very little work to be done. So like, you want to look for very passive deals. And this is, every deal can be totally different. I mean, you could have somebody who, every fund can be totally different. You could have a fund that has SaaS businesses and that person is super good at SaaS. You can have a fund that has restaurants and that person is extremely good at specifically hamburger restaurants. You know what I mean? You can have a fund that's whatever, but you want to have that plan ahead of time. So like with this particular fund, our goal is doing very passive things. So yeah, and then if you're applying for the COVID, same thing. Like that would be, it's funny because I'm actually encouraging few of the deals that are in my portfolio right now that have operators And we're doing it with that same deal, Long Tail Pro. We're doing it with a deal Federico did, where it fits into one of the COVID programs. So we want them to apply for COVID. And these are the kind of things that it really changes the way you think. This is what I'm going to be working with you guys on, where we are going to be really, really focused on a lot of kind of the mental work of your main focus is how is this going to be passive and how's it going to give the fund a great return. It's a lot different thinking than buying a business. It just is, it has a lot less to do with buying a business, and you're just looking at deals like, how do I create a really great ROI? And then you're thinking about those businesses from a strategic point of, we get to spend more time thinking, oh, like we can do the research into COVID or pay somebody to do research into the COVID programs, because now we can apply that to, out of 10 deals, maybe 4 deals. And, that becomes a good enough benefit that it's worth us going to them and helping them through that process. So you're really providing these services. And in some cases, you can go to, you asked about fees and that kind of thing. I would rather go to the operators and say, hey, how can we provide a service to you operators, as opposed to, and then charge the business for that, as opposed to the investors. You know what I mean? You should be really focusing on getting cash cows that have huge margins and no expenses. This is a much, much different thing. The types of deals that you want that personally I like to do are just much different than what I would do if I were going out and buying a business. One of the reasons why, this call is separate from the general, just like buy a business call, is, what I've been doing over the last 6 years, just managing funds, is just totally different. Even now, like the way that we operate with a public company is different from anything like a fund. We're totally different from anything like running my own business. So this is a whole different thing. It's almost like you want to just throw out what we, like outside of like looking, make sure the business is good and due diligence and all that. Like the way we're looking at these deals is all about how do we get an ROI out of this, not how do we buy a business. What size fund are you talking? It's the fund is going to be probably a $500,000 fund. So it'll be a pretty, small but normal micro private equity size fund. How do you start I see. I've actually just realized what your question was here, Curtis, I think. So starting the structure of the fund, you've got the general partnership, which, we talked about, and then you have the LP. And so that's literally what you're creating to create the fund. But like I said, even before you get to the legal, you literally, the first step you always want to do is a deal. Like even when I did my $12 million fund, I had the first deal before we did a lot of the legal stuff. All right, we're back to where that. How do you raise multiple rounds? Do you dilute investors? So a couple ways to do that. You don't dilute investors in a fund. You say this fund is worth $1 million. This is what the shares are worth. And so this isn't, again, this is one of the reasons this is not like having a company. It's $1 million fund. That's what it's worth. And, that the share, if it's whatever, if somebody wants 10%, it's going to be 100,000. If you raise another 100,000, it's going to be another 10%. You use some shares to get shares from somebody else, and that's 100,000. That's going to be 10%. So there's no dilution in this. Whatever the fund is, that's what that value is gonna be. All right. How many businesses would you put into a $500,000 fund? Probably it'd be a minimum of 5, but you know, probably no more than 10. So that range you're talking about is exactly right. Definitely no more. Probably it would probably be, you know, more like 5 to 7. Curtis, okay, so find the deal, then yeah. So you really have to have the deal first. It's really, I also I think it's dangerous. It messes up your fun. So there, you know, there's just all these little things that you learn along the way. The other reason that you want to have the deal before you start the fund is that as soon as you start the fund, your clock on returns starts clicking. So it starts ticking like the day that you start that fund and everything. So it's like now your fund it's been created, it's active. And so your ROI calculation really starts. And, you know, if an order comes in, they're like, okay, this is the date that you started and this is when you start making money and da. So you can go back and say, well, really, we didn't start, but it's way more powerful to say, yeah, this was the founding of our fund, day one. This is the ROI that we've gotten since day one of just like the founding. Now, if you start that and you gotta find the deal, that takes 3 to 6 months. You got to do due diligence on the deal. That takes another month, and then you finally get it closed, and then you got a little while for the money actually starts coming into the account, and you just like all of that. Now you got 9 months of zero income. So, in addition to the other things I talked about in the training, just there you gotta have the deal. You want to have the deal before you do the fund. Would you look to grow the value of the portfolio entity? So no, you can't. The value of the entity of the fund can't grow. I mean, you're getting a return, but see, like again, this is just totally different from the way that you're thinking about growing a business. Everything is based on that initial valuation. So your ROI is based on that initial value of the fund. So that's one of the reasons that the fund wouldn't get more valuable or less valuable. It's because like you're just calculating returns based off of that. So whatever returns you do get, you do want to grow the value, obviously, but it's not that the value increases. You're just giving whatever returns you get. If a company in the portfolio grows and you sell that, you're going to get that payment, to the investors, and then they're getting an ROI based on that value of the fund or assets under management. Cool. All right. So folks that are interested in this can reach out to Luis and just hey, I'm interested in being a joint partner in the fund, being a part of the fund that Ace discussed on the call. I'll be kind of interviewing folks this week, just making sure you're a good fit, and we'll be talking to some other folks and promoting this. So if you're interested in that, definitely reach out soon, and because I'll be making that basically the decision this week. Thanks so much. This has been really great. Obviously, if you do have additional questions, we can get into that on the call as well. This fund, yes, this is an income fund. Just to answer that last question, it's definitely a income fund. All right, guys, enjoy your night. Hopefully you guys have been productive in these quarantine times. Lots of opportunities. There's going to be a ton of opportunities coming in the next 2 months. So whatever you're doing, hopefully you are positioning yourself to take advantage of it. All right, guys, I'll talk to you soon.